a Wikividi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Marcus Garvey. Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr. ONH was a proponent of black nationalism in Jamaica and especially the United States. He was a leader of a mass movement called Pan-Africanism, and he founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. He also founded the Black Star Line, a shipping and passenger line which promoted the return of the African diaspora to their ancestral lands. Although most American black leaders condemned his methods and his support for racial segregation, Garvey attracted a large following. The Black Star Line went bankrupt and Garvey was imprisoned for mail fraud in the selling of its stock. His movement then rapidly collapsed. Prior to the 20th century, leaders such as Prince Hall, Martin Delany, Edward Wilmot Blyden, and Henry Highland Garnet advocated the involvement of the African diaspora in African affairs. Garvey was unique in advancing a Pan-African philosophy to inspire a global mass movement and economic empowerment focusing on Africa, known as Garveyism. Promoted by the ANIA as a movement of African redemption, Garveyism would eventually inspire others, ranging from the Nation of Islam to the Rastafari movement. Garveyism intended persons of African ancestry in the diaspora to redeem the nations of Africa and for the European colonial powers to leave the continent. His essential ideas about Africa were stated in an editorial in Negro World entitled African Fundamentalism, where he wrote, "Our union must know no clime, boundary, or nationality, to let us hold together under all climes and in every country." Early years. Marcus Mosiah Garvey Jr. was born as the youngest of 11 children in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica, to Marcus Mosiah Garvey Sr., Mason, and Sarah Jane Richards, a domestic worker. Only he and his sister, Indiana, survived to adulthood. His family was financially stable given the circumstances of this time period. Garvey's father had a large library, and it was from his father that Marcus gained his love for reading. He also attended elementary schools in St. Ann's Bay during his youth. While attending these schools, Garvey first began to experience racism. At age 14, Marcus became a printer's apprentice. In 1903, he traveled to Kingston, Jamaica, and soon became involved in union activities. In 1907, he took part in an unsuccessful printers' strike, and the experience gave him a passion for political activism. In 1910, Garvey left Jamaica and began traveling throughout the Central American region. His first stop was Costa Rica, where he had a maternal uncle. He lived in Costa Rica for several months and worked as a timekeeper on a banana plantation. He began work as editor for a daily newspaper called La Nacional in 1911. Later that year, he moved to Colón, Panama, where he edited a bi-weekly newspaper, before returning to Jamaica in 1912. Over time, Marcus Garvey became influenced by many civil rights activists of his time. He ultimately combined the economic nationalist ideas of Booker T. Washington and Pan-Africanists with the political possibilities and urban style of men and women living outside of plantation and colonial societies. After years of working in the Caribbean, Garvey left Jamaica to live in London from 1912 to 1914, where he attended Birkbeck College, taking classes in law and philosophy. He also worked for the African Times and Orient Review, published by Deuce Muhammad Ali, who was a considerable influence on the young man. Garvey sometimes spoke at Hyde Park's Speaker's Corner. Organization of ANIA. In 1914, Garvey returned to Jamaica, where he organized the Universal Negro Improvement Association. In an article titled "The Negro's Greatest Enemy," published in Current History, Garvey explained the origin of the organization's name, after corresponding with Booker T. Washington, head of the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama and a national African American leader in the United States. Garvey traveled by ship to the U.S., arriving on the 23rd of March 1916 aboard the SS Tulac. He intended to make a lecture tour and to raise funds to establish a school in Jamaica modeled after Washington's institute. Garvey visited Tuskegee, and afterwards, visited with a number of black leaders. Throughout his life, Garvey and the ANIA used the organization's resources to give people of African descent opportunities in academics that he felt they wouldn't be provided otherwise. After moving to New York, he found work as a printer by day. He was influenced by Hubert Harrison. At night he would speak on street corners, much as he did in London's Hyde Park. Garvey thought there was a leadership vacuum among African Americans. On the 9th of May 1916, he held his first public lecture in New York City at St. Mark's Church in the Bowery and undertook a 38-state speaking tour. The next year in May 1917, Garvey and 13 others formed the first INEA division outside Jamaica in Harlem. They began advancing ideas to promote social, political, and economic freedom for black people. On the 2nd of July, the East St. Louis riots broke out. On the 8th of July, Garvey delivered an address, entitled, "The Conspiracy of the East St. Louis Riots," at Lafayette Hall in Harlem. During the speech, he declared the riot was one of the bloodiest outrages against mankind, condemning America's claims to represent democracy. When black people were victimized, for no other reason than they are black people seeking an industrial chance in a country that they have labored for 300 years to make great, it is a time to lift one's voice against the savagery of a people who claim to be the dispensers of democracy. By October, rancor within the INEA had begun to set in. A split occurred in the Harlem division, with Garvey enlisted to become its leader. Although he technically held the same position in Jamaica, Garvey worked to develop a program to improve the conditions of ethnic Africans, at home and abroad, under INEA auspices. On the 17th of August 1918, he began publishing the Negro World newspaper in New York, which was widely distributed. Garvey worked as an editor without pay until November 1920. He used Negro World as a platform for his views to encourage growth of the INEA. By June 1919, the membership of the organization had grown to over 2 million, according to its records. On the 27th of June 1919, the INEA set up its first business, incorporating the Black Star Line of Delaware, with Garvey as president. By September, it acquired its first ship. Much fanfare surrounded the inspection of the SS Yarmouth, and its rechristening as the SS Frederick Douglass on the 14th of September 1919. Such a rapid accomplishment garnered attention from many. The Black Star Line also formed a fine winery, using grapes harvested only in Ethiopia. During the first year, the Black Star Line's stock sales brought in $600,000. They had numerous problems during the next 2 years, mechanical breakdowns on their ships, what was said to be a result of incompetent workers, and poor record keeping. The officers were eventually accused of mail fraud. Edwin P. Kilroe, Assistant District Attorney in the District Attorney's Office of the County of New York, began an investigation into the activities of the INEA. He never filed charges against Garvey or other officers. After being called to Kilroe's office numerous times for questioning, Garvey wrote an editorial on the Assistant DA's activities for the Negro World. Kilroe had Garvey arrested and indicted for criminal libel, but dismissed the charges after Garvey published a retraction. On the 14th of October 1919, Garvey received a visit in his Harlem office from George Tyler, who claimed Kilroe had sent him to get the leader. Tyler pulled a .38 caliber revolver and fired 4 shots, wounding Garvey in the right leg and scalp. Garvey's secretary Amy quickly arranged to get Garvey taken to the hospital for treatment, and Tyler was arrested. The next day, Tyler committed suicide by leaping from the 3rd tier of the Harlem jail as he was being taken to his arraignment. By August 1920, the INEA claimed 4 million members. The number has been questioned because of the organization's poor record keeping. That month, the International Convention of the INEA was held, with delegates from all over the world attending. 25,000 people filled Madison Square Garden on the 1st of August 1920 to hear Garvey speak. Over the next couple of years, Garvey's movement was able to attract an enormous number of followers. Reasons for this included the Cultural Revolution of the Harlem Renaissance, the large number of West Indians who immigrated to New York, and the appeal of the slogan, "One God, One Aim, One Destiny," to black veterans of the First World War. Garvey also established a business, the Negro Factories Corporation. He planned to develop the businesses to manufacture every marketable commodity in every big U.S. industrial center, as well as in Central America, the West Indies, and Africa. Related endeavors included a grocery chain, restaurant, publishing house, and other businesses. Convinced that black people should have a permanent homeland in Africa, Garvey sought to develop Liberia, It had been founded by the American Colonization Society in the 19th century as a colony to free blacks from the United States. Garvey launched the Liberia Program in 1920, intended to build colleges, industrial plants, and railroads as part of an industrial base from which to operate. He abandoned the program in the mid-1920s after much opposition from European powers with interests in Liberia. In response to American suggestions that he wanted to take all ethnic Africans of the diaspora back to Africa, he wrote, "We do not want all the Negroes in Africa. Some are no good here, and naturally will be no good there." The ANIA held an international convention in 1921 at New York City's Madison Square Garden. Also represented at the convention were organizations such as the Universal Black Cross Nurses, the Black Eagle Flying Corps, and the Universal African Legion. Garvey attracted more than 50,000 people to the event and in his cause. The ANIA had more than 1 million due-paying members at its peak. The national level of support in Jamaica helped Garvey to become one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century on the island. Marriage and family. At the age of 32 in 1919, Garvey married his first wife, Amy Ashwood Garvey. Amy Ashwood Garvey was also a founder of the ANIA ACL. She had saved Garvey in the Tyler assassination by quickly getting medical help. After 3 years of marriage, Garvey separated from her. In 1922, he married again, to Amy Jake Garvey, who was working as his Secretary General. They had 2 sons together, Marcus Mosiah Garvey III, who was born the 17th of September 1930, and Julius Winston. Amy Jake Garvey played an important role in his career, and would become a lead worker in Garvey's movement. Views on communism. Garvey is known as a leading political figure because of his determination to fight for the unity of African Americans by creating the Universal Negro Improvement Association and rallying to gather supporters to fight. With this group he touched upon many topics such as education, the economy, and independence. An important aspect of his career was his thoughts on communism. Garvey felt that communism would be more beneficial for whites by solving their own political and economic problems, but would further limit the success of blacks rising together. He believed that the Communist Party wanted to use the African American vote to smash and overthrow the capitalistic white majority to put their majority group or race still in power, not only as communists, but as white men. The Communist Party wanted to have as many supporters as possible, even if it meant having blacks, but Garvey discouraged this. Communists were, as he saw it, white men who wanted to manipulate blacks so they could continue to have control over them. Garvey said, "It is a dangerous theory of economic and political reformation, because it seeks to put government in the hands of an ignorant white mass who have not been able to destroy their natural prejudices towards Negroes and other non-white people. While it may be a good thing for them, it will be a bad thing for the Negroes who will fall under the government of the most ignorant, prejudiced class of the white race." Brought to you by Wikividi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?